Hello everyone, it's me, Aaron, Professor Thorgy, and welcome to another episode of Comic Class, the show every single week on this channel where we just geek out about comic books. And if you have been paying attention to this channel over the past couple months, you know Marvel Comics has continuously put their foot in their mouth. We have made several videos talking about all the, let's call them, kerfuffles that have gone on at Marvel. The most recent one being that Marvel said that their sales were down, and when asked why their sales were down, they said that was due to many reasons, including, and this is the one that got everyone's attention, the diversity of their characters. Yes, they said that because they had been trying to create so many new and diverse characters, the audiences out there just didn't want to read those books. And I, as someone who works in a comic shop, who has seen a brand new audience coming to my store to read these more diverse characters and returning month after month to continue reading about these characters, I made several videos pointing out, no, that is indeed not the case. And I didn't just quote my own personal experience, I brought in facts from the sales figures of all their books to point out that on average, their more diverse characters are actually selling a little bit better than their non-diverse characters, and that the majority of their lowest selling books over the past year have continued to be the non-diverse characters. But that is a rant that I have already gone on. My point is, when they came out and announced Marvel Legacy, a brand new relaunch to try and get all their readers back, to try and freshen things up again, to try and boost their sales, everybody was pretty nervous that this meant they were going to get rid of all those new characters that people had fallen in love with. Well, after all this waiting and speculation, Marvel has finally come out and announced all the titles for Marvel Legacy. And looking at it, the first thing that I will say is that it does not look like Marvel is trying to get rid of their more diverse characters and their more diverse books. Hooray for Marvel. Kudos to you. I applaud you for not making a huge, massive mistake. However, you know how I said that I made a video talking about how diversity was not Marvel's problem? I also pointed out several things that were Marvel's problem. And I'm looking at this relaunch and yeah, it doesn't look like Marvel is really addressing any of their problems. In fact, doing this without actually addressing anything seems like it might contribute to some of your problems. Now, this is not my first relaunch rodeo. You guys know that for Marvel Now, all new, all different Marvel, and for DC Rebirth, I made videos coming in here examining every single one of the books that were announced, and I broke them down into several videos, analyzing everything that we knew about these titles, and talking about what we could expect from them, and talking about the creative teams that were assigned to them. And I was going to do the same thing here with Marvel Legacy. Problem is, after I started looking at this list, I realized there's nothing to talk about with Marvel Legacy. And that's the first thing that we need to address with this. One of the problems that I said that Marvel has with their books is that they will have really good, big stories happening in these titles, but they can't get people to talk about them because Marvel is always so busy talking about whatever the next thing is that they're going to do that they never even promote their own books. So it's hard to get people to pay attention to this. So I looked at the lineup for Marvel Legacy and I thought this is a great opportunity to get people talking about your smaller books, about your new books, about these more diverse characters that you want people to be reading. But when I look at the books that are coming out, it's nothing. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying these books are nothing. I'm saying these books are exactly the same books that are out right now. This is not a relaunch. This isn't anything. I don't even know if I would refer to this as slapping a fresh coat of paint on your franchises. Everything just looks exactly the same. All I can really tell that they're doing is they're canceling about 3 books. As I can tell from now, Unstoppable Wasp, Doctor Strange and the Sorcerer Supreme, and Rocket Raccoon all appear to have been canceled and are not getting Marvel Legacy titles. And maybe the Ultimates as well. The Ultimates have been left off this list. However, I think they might just be on a break. I don't think they're officially canceled. So for now, as far as we can tell, 3 titles have been canceled, but they're launching 2 brand new ones. Marvel, one of the biggest problems that I said that you have is you just have too many books. You will put out over 20 books in a single week, and then you turn to your audience and you say, wow, I can't believe that you guys weren't willing to read all these books. We can't do that. We don't have the money to buy that many books. We don't even have the time to read that many books. That is too many titles. You need to whittle this down to something manageable, something where people can walk into their comic book store, pick up a good selection of your titles, and then walk out of there going, yeah, you know what? I have a feeling of what's going on at Marvel Comics right now. I read enough to understand their universe. In fact, not only do you still have too many books, you still have 52 books. I kid you not. There are some people out there who are going to be confused. You might be new to comics and you're wondering why on earth is that important. That was DC's big claim to fame when they launched the New 52. They came out here and said, we have 52 titles in our lineup. How impressive is that? And now I'm looking over at Marvel and it's like, please tell me you did not on purpose just to try and start some rivalry with DC come in here and go, we have to get this to exactly 52 titles. Trust me, we're trying to make a statement on this. Don't get me wrong, there was a time in which if somebody told me, hey, this comic book company is launching 52 titles, I would have sat there and gone, oh my goodness, that is really impressive. But those days are gone. We have seen what happens when you launch that many books all at once. Nobody can read them all, and half of them are going to get canceled quick because you just can't keep an audience reading that many titles every single week. They're going to go broke. So yes, one of Marvel's biggest problems is that they just have too many books. They divide their audience up among themselves. They're not even fighting with DC for audiences. They're fighting with themselves for audiences. And this would have been their opportunity to come in here and go, you know what? We're going to take that big divide audience. We're going to whittle some books down. And then that audience is going to get smushed together. And these book sales are going to go up because we're going to have that many people reading fewer titles. It's going to work out. We're going to be able to provide a bigger spotlight to some of our other characters that we're keeping around. Trust me, this is going to work out just fine. It did not work out just fine. You didn't cancel anything. Literally, this is the exact same lineup that you just had last month. And the thing that gives me the most about this is that, yes, Marvel has some books that don't sell all that great. However, they speak to a certain audience that doesn't really have a book out there for them. Like take Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, for example. That book is great for young girls. I have so many young girls that come into my store reading Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, and that's really the only book out there that is aimed at them. So great, awesome. Even if the sales on that book are not that high, the fact that it provides an audience for Marvel that would not be there otherwise, that makes it a smart move to keep that book around. So yes, I would totally applaud them keeping that book around. However, there are some other books at Marvel that don't sell at all, and Marvel is still keeping them around for some reason. USA Avengers? Oh, I'm sorry. Were we lacking on Avengers titles? That book doesn't really sell at all. It doesn't really provide important information for your universe. It doesn't bring in an audience that wouldn't be there otherwise. It really is just kind of there so that you can have another Avengers book, and you don't need another Avengers book. And yet, you're keeping this book around. And I don't mean to pick on USA Avengers, I'm just picking it as an example. There are plenty other books at Marvel that really don't need to exist, and yet they're going to continue to exist. This would have been an excellent opportunity for Marvel to come in here and clean house, but instead it looks like they've just decided to leave the clutter where it is and hope that everything works itself out. And another problem that Marvel has is that it just keeps launching too many titles too quickly, and that doesn't really have anything to do with Marvel Legacy. However, it is taking away from the impact that Marvel Legacy should have, because I'm looking at all these books, and they should feel like a fresh jumping on point for all these titles. They should feel like something new for all these books, like a big change in direction that's going to get everybody's attention. However, some of these titles are starting like the month right before this. So, I'm sorry, are you coming in here and telling me that issue number 1 is not a good starting point, but wait for issue 2, that's the one when things get good? In fact, I'll be totally honest with you. I'm looking at a lot of the books on this list, and I can guarantee you they're not even going to change writers on these titles. Dan Slott will still be writing Amazing Spider-Man. Until the day he dies, he is going to latch on to that franchise for dear life. Chip Zdarsky will still be writing Spectacular Spider-Man. Greg Pak will still be writing Incredible Hulk. It is kind of cool that they're switching that title from Totally Awesome Hulk to Incredible Hulk. I will admit, I like that simply because, hey, when they announced that the title of this book was going to be Totally Awesome Hulk, I came in here and said, hey, you know what? That's great because kids love the Hulk, and that is a good title for a Hulk series for kids. And then the book came out, and no kids at my store bought it. It was all just teenagers and adults, and they were like, yeah, I kind of want to read a Hulk book, but Totally Awesome Hulk, that's kind of a lame name. So, all right, I'll admit I was wrong on that one. It did not bring in the kids like I thought it would. It just kept the adult audience that it always had. So yeah, switch that title back to being Incredible Hulk. It just sounds way more accurate. But back to what I was saying, Mark Waid will still be writing Avengers. Mark Waid will still be writing The Champions. All the X-Men books will remain exactly the same. They have not been around long enough for them to come in here and change up the writers and the artist. So yeah, I'm looking at all these titles. I honestly cannot point at one book and say, yeah, that's the one that's going to be different now. That's the one that's going to be completely changed and will not resemble the old book in any way, shape, or form. No, everything is going to basically remain exactly the same. The one change that I can really tell as far as the tone of these books is Marvel said that they wanted to return to what worked for them in the past. They wanted to go back to the feeling of their older books, and that was incredibly vague, and no one knew what they meant by that. In fact, in all honesty, I was very concerned because, as I said, they made this announcement right after they decided to point fingers at all the things that should not have fingers pointed at them, blaming them for their low sales, when again, they were not what was responsible for their low sales. So yeah, I'll admit, I was kind of concerned, and I thought Marvel was going to come in here and change a lot of things that did not need to be changed. But as I said, it does look like most of their new characters are remaining, most of their legacy characters are remaining. So I thought, okay, if that's not what they're going to change, then what did they mean by returning to what worked for them in the past, by returning to their older books? What did they mean by that? And when I look at these titles, this is the one compliment I will give them. I see She-Hulk fighting the Leader. I see Doctor Strange fighting Loki. I see Daredevil fighting the Kingpin. I see Black Panther fighting Claw. I see Miles Morales fighting a brand new Sinister Six. I see Jessica Jones fighting the Purple Man. I see Mojo popping back up in the X-Men titles. Do you see the pattern here? Do you see the theme that I'm bringing up? What I see is heroes fighting villains. Crazy idea for a comic book company, isn't it? Yes, one of the biggest problems that we have had with Marvel over the past couple years is it's just been heroes fighting heroes, or it's just been heroes lounging around their apartment, not really doing anything and not really progressing their story ahead. This is actually going to have heroes acting like superheroes again, fighting supervillains, going out there and doing things. At least that's what I'm hoping this is. I'm hoping that someone at Marvel realized that this was a problem for them, came down and told everyone at Marvel, okay, we need to get our books doing this again. We need to have our characters fighting villains, not other heroes. I'm hoping that's what happened because, yeah, this is just 1 month that we're looking at. This could just be a total coincidence that this month every single one of these writers decide to have their heroes fight big name villains rather than just, each other. And the reason I say it could be a coincidence is because with DC Rebirth, they had a lot of problems that they needed to fix. And Jeff Johns came out at the very beginning of DC Rebirth and said, listen, we have been screwing up. We have not been being what DC needs us to be. We have lost the hope, the love, the family, the legacy. We lost all those things that made DC what DC is. And when I heard that, I went, oh my gosh, someone over there understands this. Marvel has just kind of come out here and made some weird, vague, cryptic statements about what Marvel Legacy is going to be. I have no idea, based on what they have said so far, if they actually understand what they need to do with their books. If they came out here and said, listen guys, our characters have been at war too long. We need to get them to work together and be heroes and fight the villains. Then I would be staying up and applying, and I would be looking at this going, you know what? I can see it. I can see that you're dedicated to this. But because no one has said that, I'm just kind of left sitting here like, this could all just be a coincidence. And a year from now, we could be reading Civil War 3, where Tony Stark comes back from the dead so that he can fight I don't know, Black Bolt, Cable, Deadpool. Call me crazy, but you know that someone at Marvel has a script for that right now on their editor's desk. But okay, that's pretty much my full analysis of what we have seen so far from Marvel Legacy. I know I didn't really go into a lot of specifics on this, but as I said, pretty much everything we're getting is what we've already gotten. So this is really such a non-story to talk about. And it's a shame that this should be the biggest thing to happen to Marvel in years. And wow, it just fell on its face. There's really nothing here to talk about. They somehow found a way to make their big relaunch completely uninteresting. However, there are a few changes. Out of the 52 books, I still cannot believe that. Out of the 52 books that we are getting, there are a couple of changes that are pretty obvious to these titles. So I'm going to go in here and actually talk about just a handful of these books. I'm not going to go issue by issue because, as I said, there's really nothing to talk about with almost any of them. However, for these next 5 or 6 titles, there actually are a couple of interesting things to point out. And the first book that I'm going to talk about is Amazing Spider-Man Renew Your Vows. I have been loving this book. This to me is the best Spider-Man book out there right now. It's the one that perfectly captures what I loved about Spider-Man and Mary Jane. It continues this alternate reality story where they stayed together and they had a daughter and now they're going out there as one big crime-fighting family. I love seeing that entire family going out there together. It is so much fun. However, that book is about to change in a dramatic direction because, yes, this was the story of Pete and Mary Jane and their little daughter who was just starting elementary school. Yes, Spiderling. She was this young superhero and she is going to grow up because the preview that we're getting for this, it says introducing the new Spiderling. And yeah, it looks like she's going from like 6 or 7 years old up to being about 12 or 13. I was not expecting this book to pull out a time skip. This is crazy to me. And I don't mean crazy in a bad way. I don't mean like, what on earth are they doing? I mean crazy as in, this is totally unexpected. I never in 1,000 years would have guessed that Marvel would do something like this with this book. Because typically when Marvel has an alternate reality title out there, they like to try and build that world as its own thing and just let that book continue at its own pace, going on its own timeline, not really changing anything, just letting it exist. Just look at the Ultimate books, just look at Spider-Gwen. Aside from a few examples where they might have jumped ahead by a few months, those books continued on their own pace like they were just a regular part of the Marvel Universe. But this book is actually going to jump ahead by 5 or 6 years. That is incredibly bold. I actually applaud this book for doing that. Don't get me wrong, I would have absolutely loved to continue reading the adventures of Pete and Mary Jane and their daughter as they went out there and she learned how to be a superhero, but yeah, this is going to allow them to tell bold news stories. It's going to allow them to not ever feel stale. It's going to allow them to continue to push this story ahead. It's going to allow them to actually progress these characters. They're not going to keep these characters stuck at one point forever. We're actually going to get to see what happens when this family grows up. I never would have expected that from this title, and I applaud them for doing it. Next up, we see that Iceman is going to be reuniting with his old Champions team. There's nothing else that I really want to point out about this other than the fact that I just think that's incredibly cool. No pun intended. In Iron Man, it looks like Riri Williams is going to be actually confronting Dr. Doom over the title of Iron Man because Dr. Doom feels like he is the worthy successor to that title. She believes that she is the official successor to that title. It's actually good to finally see these two meeting. It was one of those things that we knew was going to happen eventually, and I'm kind of shocked that it took this long for it to happen. In Hawkeye, we see that Kate Bishop is going to be joining up with Clint Barton again, who is going to be a regular part of this book. So I think that's cool. I like Kate Bishop, I like Clint Barton, but I think that for the majority of fans out there, they want to see these two characters working together. So yeah, they're going to give the fans what they want. I'm fine with that. It looks like Moon Knight is coming back. I thought that series was done for after Jeff Lemire left. However, Marvel realizes that no matter who is writing that book, people are now officially excited for Moon Knight, which is kind of cool to think about. When I was growing up, if you announced a Moon Knight book, it'd be really hard to sell that title, but now Moon Knight is officially a thing that people are excited for again. So, hey, awesome, Moon Knight is going to have another series, and I can't wait to see who they're going to assign to write it. However, I will say, every single one of the covers for these books are parodying old covers, and the Moon Knight book is parodying an old issue of his that was a special double-size issue, and it had that banner at the top that says special double-size issue, and this Moon Knight issue says special oversized 25-page issue. Okay, Marvel, I have brought this up numerous times, and I was not going to say anything in this video, but you officially put this on the cover of one of your books, so you're kind of forcing my hand. The average size of a comic book is 20 to 21 pages. 25 pages is only 4 extra pages. That is not a special oversized issue. It's just slightly bigger than a regular one, and I know you're going to use this as an excuse to charge an extra $1 for it. Do not do that. Give people the extra 4 pages for free. No one is going to pay that extra $1 and be happy with just 4 extra pages. Next up, one of the new titles that we're going to be getting is Spirits of Vengeance. It is going to be a team book starring Ghost Rider, Blade, Damon Hellstrom, and Satana. And listen, I think that this is an awesome idea for a series. I think that none of these characters have shown that they can hold a book on their own. However, if you bring them all together in a team, they might just be able to carry that title. All of them coming together might be able to bring those audiences together, which is what Marvel needs to do right now. So honestly, yeah, I am really excited to see a supernatural team at Marvel. However, I do have one very small problem, but it is kind of driving me nuts. Marvel, this is not a new team. This team has existed. Your supernatural team with Ghost Rider and Blade and Hellstrom, and they're all going out there to fight demons and other supernatural threats. You've had that before. They're called the Midnight Suns, not the Spirits of Vengeance. Just call the book Midnight Suns, for crying out loud. Again, sorry, very small, specific complaint, but I had to get it off my chest. Although, speaking of small, specific things I want to talk about, the Scarlet Spider book is going to have the Slingers returning. I know nobody else out there aside from me cares about that, but I love the Slingers titles from back in the 90s. That book was way ahead of its time. If that book had come out in the 2000s, people would have been hailing it as the next Runaways, and that team just kind of faded away and no one ever talked about them again. But hey, they're returning in Scarlet Spider. That's something I can kind of be excited for. Next book I want to talk about is Mighty Thor. Now, the cover to this is paying homage to the death of Captain Marvel, and a lot of people are looking at this saying, oh my goodness, are they going to kill Jane Foster and bring back the old Thor? Now, as I said, I am applauding Marvel for keeping a lot of their legacy characters around. And in all honesty, I feel the one that they need to keep around the most is Jane Foster. She's the one that years after she was announced still has new audiences coming into my store on a fairly regular basis wanting to pick up her book. She's the one legacy character people are still really talking about, still really excited for. And part of that has to do with the fact that Jason Aaron has just been writing a damn good series on that book. But my point is, if there is one character that they need to keep around, it's Jane Foster. So a lot of people have been looking at this going, oh my goodness, they're going to kill her off. I don't necessarily think so. As I said, I read the current Mighty Thor series, and in that book, Jane Foster has been suffering from cancer, and every time that she picks up the hammer, it basically erases all the chemotherapy that's been done to her body, so every time that she turns into Thor, it actually makes her weaker. It actually causes the disease to actually get a little bit worse. So this is not some new thing that Marvel is coming in here and saying, oh, well, we need to get back the old characters, so we gotta kill off Jane Foster. That's not what's happening at all. This is the storyline that has been building for years. This is what Jason Aaron has been leading up to. In fact, in the most recent issue, Jane Foster finally confronted Thor Odinson and said, listen, I'm past the point of no return. There's no cure for what I have now. I can't fight this any longer. I will eventually either die, as Jane Foster, or I will just pick up the hammer and never drop it, and Jane Foster will just fade away and I will just be Thor forever. That's what I think this is. This is like the one thing from all these legacy titles that I'm looking at, like, yeah, that's kind of the thing that Marvel should be talking about. That's actually something that feels like a big deal. All these other titles don't really feel like a big deal. This one actually feels really big and freaking important. This is what the Jane Foster Thor series has been leading up to. Is this the moment that Jane Foster dies, or she just becomes Thor forever? That's actually a really big deal, and that actually is something that deserves to be spotlighted. Now, moving into something far less dramatic, one of the only few new series that has been announced is that they are bringing Marvel 2-in-1 back. Yes, Marvel 2-in-1 was a team-up series that ran for several years, except it wasn't like Marvel Team-Up, where you could have any hero pop up. Marvel 2-in-1 was specifically the Thing teaming up with people. Yeah, that's something that I always find interesting. Whenever someone tells me, oh, this character is popular and they'll be around forever, I always like to remind people that there was a time when the Thing had his own team-up series, and it went for years and was insanely popular. But yes, they are bringing Marvel 2-in-1 back, and it is specifically going to now be a duo book between the Thing and the Human Torch. I find this rather interesting, because it's kind of like Marvel coming in here and saying, listen, we know that there's an audience out there that wants the Fantastic Four back, but for various reasons, we don't feel comfortable bringing the Fantastic Four back. And even if we did, we kind of made a really big deal about their final story and about their last big hurrah and their send-off. That was kind of a big moment for us, and it was just a year and a half ago, so it would kind of look stupid if we just brought the Fantastic Four back right now. So instead, it looks like they are just going to take the two remaining members of the Fantastic Four who are still here on Earth, the Thing and the Human Torch, and give them their own series. And honestly, I'm totally okay with that, because my favorite thing about the Fantastic Four was always the interactions between the Thing and the Human Torch. So, giving the two of them a series, I think could be a ton of fun. In fact, I really want to know who is going to be writing this book. I really hope it's somebody with a great sense of humor. In fact, I kind of hope that's Chip Zdarsky, but I kind of doubt it's going to be him, because I think that that new Spider-Man book is going to be taking up the majority of his time. So instead, more than likely, it's going to be Al Ewing, who, you know what? Al Ewing, he can do a pretty good job on this. I would trust him on this title. But that brings me to the final book that I want to talk about, which is The Falcon. Now, as I said, I applaud Marvel for keeping so many of these legacy characters around, for realizing how important these legacy characters are, and for realizing that there is an audience out there that wants to read about them. However, while I said that Jane Foster was probably the biggest legacy character that they need to keep around because she's the one that's been bringing in the biggest audience, the one who I personally wanted them to keep around the most was Sam Wilson as Captain America. Yes, I know everybody has been talking about the Steve Rogers Captain America book because it's been leading into Secret Empire and it had all these huge major revelations happening and it made national news and blah, blah, blah. I didn't care about any of that because to me, the Captain America book that I was loving the most was the Sam Wilson Captain America book. Yeah, I feel like Sam provided a unique voice to being Captain America. In fact, in the book, he came in there and basically said, yeah, Steve was the Cap who always looked ahead and was always hopeful. I'm the Cap who looks here at the present and sees all the problems around us and actually wants to address them. And I thought, yeah, that's actually why I like him more as Captain America. He's the Cap who's not afraid to look around and go, this is some bull crap and we need to fix this. I like the idea of a Captain America who speaks truth to power. And don't get me wrong, Steve Rogers spoke truth to power, but that's kind of Sam Wilson's whole thing. That's kind of the thing that is defining him as Captain America. So that's what made me really want to latch onto him, really made me want to support his character. However, he is now going back to being the Falcon, and I'll be honest with you, I don't like any part of this. For starters, the Falcon has never been a solo hero. He's never been a hero that's been able to hold his own book, which is going to make it really hard for this book to succeed. It's really hard for people who don't have a pre-existing attachment to a title to go in and support a title, especially when there are 52 other titles out there. So even if it was the exact same character, exact same artist, exact same writer, if you just called it the title of a book that people already did have a pre-existing connection to, then yeah, it would have a far higher chance of sticking around and succeeding. And Captain America had that. The Falcon does not. But another problem that I have with him going back to being the Falcon is that Captain America isn't like Iron Man. He's not like Thor. He's not like Spider-Man. You can look at those characters and say they represent something, but Captain America stands for something. And the thing that he stands for and represents is far greater than pretty much anything that any other character at Marvel stands for and represents. So if you have someone become Captain America and then quit being Captain America to go back to being something else, yeah, it kind of feels like a demotion. And I know someone might be coming in here and saying, well, what about when Bucky was Cap and then he stopped being Cap to go back to being the Winter Soldier? The Winter Soldier is a spy. Captain America is a hero. Those are two very different things. If you quit being a hero to go back to being a spy, that is a complete and total shift. If you quit being Captain America to go back to being just a different superhero, yeah, that feels like you're stepping down. And a lot of the reason why it feels like stepping down to me is because every single storyline in the Sam Wilson Captain America book leading up to Secret Empire was all about the media telling Sam Wilson, we don't want you as Captain America, you need to step down. It was all about higher ups coming in here and telling Sam Wilson, we don't like the things that you represent, we don't like the things that you're standing for, we don't like the things that you're saying, we don't want you to be Captain America. Basically, it was the media, it was the news, it was everyone around Sam Wilson trying to convince him to quit being Captain America. And he did eventually break. He eventually said, that's it, I'm done, I can't be Captain America anymore. It wasn't just those things. It was also a bunch of dark events that happened all around the same time as that. But my point is, it was basically a bunch of naysayers coming in here and wagging their finger at Sam Wilson, telling him that they did not like the things that he stood for, so he shouldn't be Captain America. He then stepped down. But during Secret Empire, pretty much everything that's been going on in that storyline has been leading up to Sam Wilson returning as Captain America. We have already seen the promo art for upcoming issues, and we know Sam Wilson is going to pick the shield back up, go in there, and try and stop the evil Hydra Cap. He's going to go in there and become Captain America to stand for that big, bright thing that he needs to stand for and save the day. So now we know after he goes in there and does that, he still goes, yeah, but I'm still stepping down. This kind of feels insulting to me. It would be one thing if a legacy character decided to stop being a legacy character based on their own decisions, but this is a legacy character who for years has been getting told, stop being that legacy character. Yeah, man, it looks like he's just giving up. It looks like he's defeated. Now I can't really look at him as the Falcon and go, yeah, okay, that's where you should belong. It's like, no, man, stand up to those guys. Fight them. They're wrong. You should be Captain America. That was the entire premise of his series. So the fact that he's going back to being the Falcon, yeah, it feels like defeat. It feels like this character just gave up. It feels like all those things that he wanted to stand for just aren't that important anymore because he just decided to quit. Again, this is not like when Nightwing became Batman and then he decided to go back to being Nightwing. That's a character who stepped in there and said, I'm going to fill this role in the meantime, but I am completely different from this character. And then when the time came, he said, you know what? That's it. I did my time as Batman. Time for me to step down. This is a character who went in there in that role, stood for something important, got told by everyone around him, stop standing for that important thing, and then he quit. So yeah. The fact that he will not be going back to being Captain America, this really feels like a massive screw up. I know no one over at Marvel is actually saying this, but I can't help but get that image in my head of them coming in here and going, yeah, we don't like our Captain America saying these things and standing for this stuff. So yeah, I just had to point that out because as I said, they're keeping all their legacy characters around except for the one who, if he stopped being a legacy character, it would actually kind of be a big deal. I saw several people online saying that all these Marvel Legacy titles made Marvel seem kind of tone deaf, and I know that what they were referring to with that was saying, oh, Marvel doesn't seem to understand their real problems, they don't understand the problem with having too many titles, they don't understand the problem of not changing anything up. But to me, I can't help but look at Sam Wilson returning to Falcon and think, yeah, that is totally tone deaf. You guys absolutely screwed the pooch on this one. But those are just my opinions. As I said, I'm not going through every single one of these titles because the vast majority of these titles don't give us any information at all. And what information we do get looks like the book's just going to remain exactly the same. But those are the ones that actually look like some interesting stuff, or at least stuff worth mentioning is happening. So let me know in the comments down below which of these titles you find the most interesting, which ones you want to check out. Are you at all excited for Marvel Legacy? What would you have done differently if you were in charge of Marvel Legacy? That's actually a future video that I'm going to be doing, in which I come in here and say what I would have done with a Marvel relaunch. It should be fun. If you want to see that, make sure you click that subscribe button, and you can always follow me on Twitter, Tumblr, and Twitch at Professor Thorgy. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Come back next time.